Welcome to the Purpose Breakthrough Podcast, the podcast for men who are ready to stop chasing fulfillment and start making clear, confident decisions while taking aligned action towards their true purpose. I am your host, Tyler Woods, and my intention is to help you cut through the noise so you can do what you're meant to do. Let's dive deep. Break through to the life you were meant to live. Thank you. And welcome today. I've got a special guest, Mr. Max Warren, for joining me today, brother.
Hey, bro. It's
Yeah.
really cool to be here. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'd love to just open it up to the nice invitational question is like, who are you and what are you doing in this world?
It's interesting. There's probably two unrelated pieces to the way that I'm in the world right now. One is from a leadership in the business world perspective, having gone through the whole entrepreneurial journey. A buddy of mine that I hadn't seen in a while, like it had been 2 years, and I jumped on with Ray, and Ray goes, "You're different." I said, "How so?" He goes, "Like somebody pulled you through a knothole." I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty good." So it was like a 2 year period of going through this entrepreneurial thing of making a decision if I was going to stay in the game and I was going to get back in the game, or if I was just going to go get a regular 9 to 5. And I was working through that along with, right as I was sort of making that transition and making the decision, my mom passed away. So now I was working through this internal shift and then this coming to terms with this huge loss in my life. And what was really interesting is that um, as I was going deeper inside, everything in my business world started to shift more clear that I was getting about what it looked like to take care of myself. And I noticed that in the world where I'm in operations and I'm analyzing and I'm problem solving, the balance of that for me has become through grief and the last couple of years, and actually being in the crucible, being in the fire of becoming an entrepreneur, is the physicality of qigong, the need for breath work and groundedness, and then dealing with the stuff of connections and relationships. So on the one hand, it feels like I've grown and stepped into this leadership role that is a lot of air, it's a lot of ideas, it's a lot of solving problems and sort of being the expert. While there's this other very humbling, very grounding, very sort of anchoring energy that's happened personally. And so I noticed that they they were sort of independent of each other for a while, and now they're starting to inform each other, which I find to be really, really interesting. I'm not sure, we talk about the medicine. Sometimes people go and they'll journey and they'll do ayahuasca, or they'll do psilocybin, but there's an integration period afterwards, or you'll do a summit, you'll have a peak experience. But it's like the last couple of years, even though I've desired growth and I've leaned into growth, there's been a finally sort of a settling in for me, and an actual integration post this grief, post this stepping into, having an executive title, being seen in that light as a guy that is considered to be an expert, or at least a veteran. You've been around, you have some experience, you have a different perspective. And then that blending of deepening presence, getting the message finally that maybe the most loving thing that I can do is pay attention to my breath and be conscious and just be present. Maybe that's the most loving thing I can do for myself and anybody else. Very different pieces sort of starting to blend in a way that's really unique for me and my experience of how I'm able to bring those things together.
Yeah. So in your journey being in the entrepreneurial space and in leadership, I guess how has the need for self-care, how has that ebbed and flowed, and what does that look like now versus saying like when you're in the crucible?
Mm. I think being in men's work and being in a men's community, self-care is something that is just sort of, it's in the water. It's not just a concept, it's not just a boxes that get ticked off. It's actually it's become a lifestyle. Um, life has stories and lessons, so I'm just going to be totally vulnerable. I'm going to share this story. So it is very common for me to get up 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's very common for me to meditate in the morning, to do qigong, to journal, to stretch, some form of movement, some form of reading, some form of writing. And when I was describing my normal routine to a woman on a date recently, her response to me was, I'm very evolved. And I had to laugh because I know who I am. And evolved is not a word I would use to describe me at all. I think that there's a desire in me now just to look after myself better and have
Mhm.
that just be the way I'm choosing to relate to myself instead of it being, you know, we refer to it as core four, but that's just who I am. And it was weird to hear someone else reflecting it back to me as being evolved, because to me, I'm like, no, that's what's required. The leadership position that I hold and the decisions that I make are and the impact that I can have against or for people, it's almost like a requirement for me to be taking care of myself first
Mm.
and then coming and pouring out of the overflow. If you've ever, and I'm confident you probably have at some point, bro, you're at a deficit, you're sick or you're tired and the kids need you or your partner needs you or a friend needs you, and you're like, I had Saturday all planned. I wasn't doing anything. I need a break. And you step in because it's something that you do, but there's a lot of times where you probably feel really taxed. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And what I've learned is a lifestyle of self-care, which from the outside looking in may seem strange to somebody, or it might seem like, wow, that's a little extreme, or that's structured. That's a lot of structure. To me, it's like I don't think I could be effective, and I don't think I could hold everything that I have to hold in the right way and in a good way if I didn't feed myself and nurture myself on a regular basis and pay attention to what I need, you know. So I think being in the crucible, if you're building capacity, you've got more under the hood when things get harder. But
Hmm.
if the idea is that one of our jobs as men, and I really do believe this, I've we could start rattling off names, GS Youngblood and David Data and John Wineland, and all of these guys talk about building capacity, pressuring the system so that when you're faced with conflict with your spouse, hard decisions at work, showing up as a leader, even when you're tired, you have capacity to do that. And that is an intentional, it's an intentional process that you take on to be the genuine article, man.
Mm.
It's the person that you're becoming through this practice and through this approach. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I wanna bring back to that pressurizing, that word, like, challenge, pressure. How does a man who doesn't who I, a man who is not evolved, a man who doesn't have the structure in his life, how do how does he challenge himself when he's already experiencing life as a challenge?
That is an excellent question. I think here's my sense of it. We have stories that we're carrying around about ourselves. We have narratives. And I was thinking about this the other week. Um, I was in a situation with a client where I knew that they had had trouble with consultants in the past. And what I mean by that is that they would ask for help, but very quickly they would make the consultant the bad guy. And they were painting this picture, telling this story. I was not the first guy through the doors. I was aware that there had been other consultants. I had been told by several members of the team that were more senior that this was an issue. And so I had a decision to make, and that was, am I going to let the narrative that the client has about me decide how I show up? Because obviously they have a lens, obviously they have a filter, right? So I had to make a decision about how to show up. I had to make a decision about what was needed. If a guy is in a position where everyday life is overwhelming, everyday life is challenging, every day just dealing with, the pressure and maybe it's relationship pressure, financial pressure, psychological pressure, whatever form it takes. I think that it does start with asking the question, what narrative am I in? What story am I in? And am I being portrayed by other people around me in a particular light? Are they asking me to wear a mask? Are they asking me to wear some of their projections and some of their stuff? And how am I navigating that? Um, Sometimes other people want us to carry pressure that is it's their work and their responsibility, but they don't want to feel their feelings, and they don't want to deal with what they feel like is impossible to deal with. And some men can get, I'm thinking specifically, bro, about a guy that maybe um really wants to be loved and accepted, and he can get tripped up because he's going to sell himself out or abandon himself in that process. And he may be feeling pressure because he's just not sure how to say no. He's just not sure how to put up boundaries. I believe that if a man wants to change, the two places he has to start is the boundaries around his life, to begin to protect his time and create a place to rest, right? Create a place for a reprieve, a place to refuel, because men are giving, 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 giving. It is in our nature to give ourselves away. It is in our nature to provide and to protect. And there's a certain amount of sacrifice in that. And some men are not used to sacrificing. Some men are not prepared for that. Some men want to and they aspire to more, but they're just not sure how to put the structure in place. And they're not sure how to escape the pattern that they're in or the story that they're in their own head. So I think the places you look at your energy, you look at your boundaries, you look at your stories, you start there and you start to, with compassion, look at what's driving the bus for me, what's driving the bus around making decisions, and maybe asking the question, why am I overwhelmed? If I aspire to do more, be more, and accomplish more, why is the life as I'm living it right now overwhelming to me? And then pick a starting point. But this is definitely not one of those things where it's like a New Year's resolution in January and you're going to have it buttoned up by March and you're going to be like, man, that was a tough couple of months. Glad I got that handled. This is a commitment to a deep change and transformation over a long period of time. And you don't always see it, even when you commit it first. It's a really interesting thing about men's work, bro. You commit to yourself and to the process with the knowledge that you have and the way that you understand and perceive yourself. And what happens along the journey is you find as it deepens, you end up coming back and recommitting and reevaluating. Does it make sense? You know what I mean?
Right. When a man comes into, there's whether it's a rock bottom moment, whether it's a desperation, whether it's something needs to change, and maybe reaches out for help for the first time. And say, in my case, I was introduced to men's work, started sitting in circles. I come in with my view of the world. This is like that. This is like that. This is what men is. These are what men are. These are what men do. It's like it's learning a whole different paradigm. And then from that opening, life has a lot more possibility. And just like when I'm in a space with other men, I'm open up to all of the different ways they see the world. And I think the commonality of meeting together as men allows us to just exchange our different ways we see the world, the ways we experience it differently, and the ways we experience the same, right? The things that we all carry together in similar fashions. Yeah. And that just, it evolves and expands, and people who do this for years come in and they teach away, and people who are brand new, they come in and they have their experience. And it's really just about coming together and being in a community that it allows an exchange of leadership in a way. It's like kind of like transmission or lineage of just
yeah. I think one of the most important things to remember is that just having these conversations is so important, because it's these conversations get, and when I say this, I don't these conversations and the important conversations can get squeezed out by the urgency of things and the shallowness of things around us. And it's not to say that, I'm not anti-fun at all, because I love fulfillment and I love joy and I love having fun. But one of the things that can get lost, especially when you're a younger man, is that there is a price to be paid and there is work to be done in order to become the person that you want to become. It's a recommitting of your energies, your process, and your focus every day. But what's good about it is it doesn't have to become this thing of like, um, I will use very traditional language. It's not this massive
Mm.
fall from grace. You know what I'm saying? It's a learning how to, you and I would never scold a toddler who's trying to hold on to the edge of the table and keeps falling down. We would just try to help them have a safe environment as they figure it out. And I think that that is something we need to offer ourselves as men. Stay in the
Mm.
conversation, stay in that environment where the older men are listening to the younger men are listening to the older men. There's an exchange of energies. And then there's a committing to the process of staying in this, loving ourselves, staying in this awakening, staying in this mutual support and mutual challenge, because it's the sweet spot. It's where life gets interesting and life gets rich, man. It's
Mm.
really where there's a sense of, um, purpose as a concept is not sexy. Purpose as a feeling when you wake up in the morning and you're on purpose, that is such a different experience. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
it's it's a it's a visceral thing. It's a physical thing to feel like as a man that you're on your purpose and that you have direction and you've got your practice, your path, that you're choosing for yourself.
Mm. And of course, is there room? Where does fun land on the spectrum of purpose and the path? Right? It
Yeah.
can be. It's like it's very serious. It's very important. It's very vital. And when folks look out into the world, it can seem like a lot, right? Masculinity
Yeah.
right now is
Ooh.
it's in an interesting place, right? The the kind of the era of the patriarchy, the forceful versus the powerful, the domineering, the taking, the subjugation, all of that is kind of
Mm.
crashing against the rocks in a lot of ways. And the world needs men on purpose. The world needs
Yes.
men. The world needs men who are evolved, who maybe don't think they're evolved.
I heard something last night that I found super interesting. And it was the comment that, no one will work for fear-based companies in the very near future, that fear-based companies will go the way of the dodo. And what's interesting is when you talk about the patriarchy, that top-down post-World War II command and control leadership style is in its final death throes, because it's power with, not power over. And that starts in the masculine feminine dynamic, and then it's also extends into team. Team is an invitation. Team is an opportunity to create something together. But the team environment with old school masculinity of I know better, shut up, sit down, do as I say. If you have an opinion, I'll give it to you. You know what I mean? Sort of like the need to be, it's the ego on full bore, and you
Mm.
see it in boardrooms and you see it in conversations, and you're kind of like, whoa, masculinity has been scrutinized. Masculinity, the old way of doing the masculine energy of machismo, it doesn't work. It's hollow, man. It's just absolutely hollow. Biggest thing is that you have a whole generation of women that have woken up, and they will not tolerate that kind of masculinity in their world, not at work and not in their personal lives. So men are having to evolve, um, because it's necessary, because it's time, and also because it's a, how do I want to say this? Bly used the word of a male mother. and Robert Bly when he started the Minnesota Men's Conference, and when you had the early mythopoetic men's movement, right? That's kind of the root. These guys were the OGs of men's movement. You got it, man. You got it right there. And the thing about it is that Bly was talking about male mothers. And for the longest time, I found that to be the most elusive thing for me to make it concrete. And
Mm,
what was funny is my son is 30. He is incredibly capable. He's a professional soldier. He is a staff sergeant in the United States military. He started in the 82nd Airborne Division. This is a man's man. This man's man comes to me on a regular basis to take his armor off because he knows that he can say anything to me and ask me any question and he's safe with me.
mm,
And men need that. They need that place to be able to do that. They need to have a place that's safe. When you were talking about the conversation earlier, I almost felt like in my mind's eye, I could see it like a capital C because
mm,
it's almost like it's the conversation. Like it's the masculine energy, the ebb and the flow, the iron sharpens iron. It's being in this milieu with these guys that are writing and talking about this different kind of leadership, this
mm,
different kind of masculine energy, a masculine energy that opens a woman when she's closed, that brings her back to her heart. The first time I heard that, the first time I sat with that, everything in me said, I want to be that man.
mm,
That's leadership. That's heartfelt in it where it counts leadership because my MO, bro, I've, without going into a lot of relationship history, I was in a conscious relationship for 13 years. And there were still struggles and there were still conflicts and there were still patterns and there were still things that happened. The most interesting thing for me is that throughout all of that time in that relationship, it ended before the embodiment teaching came into my life. And I'm sitting in prayer and meditation. I'm on my cushion and I'm literally like, what the hell, guys? You couldn't have brought this sooner. Like, I could have used this information 5 years ago. And what's funny is I'm sitting and I'm really grieving. Like, it hurts, man. I'm raw and I feel like not victim. I don't feel like I was gone victim, but I kind of felt ripped off. Like, damn, I really could have used this wisdom when I
mm,
needed it most about 5 years ago. And I felt spirit, God, them, however we want to frame this. They were like, would you have heard it? No. Would
mm,
you have done anything with it? No, probably not. So when you were ready to hear it and you were receptive, the seed actually landed and now you have something growing inside of you, this possibility. So I think the conversation and the practice of being masculine happens like this, bro, in
mm,
conversations, in community, in summits and weekends and medicine journeys, all that.
mm. That's a really, yeah, so that really helps me kind of place my own experience into the wider frame, right? Because if I
Mm,
were to look back at myself before I found men's groups and said like, what would that have worked 5 years ago? Would I have been ready for that? If someone had said, all you need to do is show up and sit in a circle and share some feelings, would I have given them the time of day, right? I was ready for it when I was ready for it. When there's like a leveling, a rock bottom, a desperation, there's
mhm,
an opening and an invitation, and being in that milieu of people talking about this stuff, talking about the work,
mhm,
putting on their offerings, doing their things, just being the embodiment of purpose and leadership. It's
mhm,
just a constant invitation. Like you said, masculinity on the whole, I don't want to be the man who can speak for all men, but it seems like the broader arc of things is just opening up more and more and more as people just take it and live it,
mhm.
span it, like the embodiment. We're not just in archetypes anymore. We're moving on and deepening and figuring out what really produces results,
Yeah.
right?
It's powerful to have the archetypal framework, and I love the archetypal framework. But what I found with Qigong is what happened for me, and this I think is the biggest thing. If if my reactive protector is online and my 5 year old is the one picking up the phone to answer the phone in the middle of a conflict and just being metaphorical, this is a bad thing. This is no good. the Terry Real talks about this secondary consciousness, and it's basically that you're able to have bandwidth in the middle of tension, fight, conflict, where you get to show up as the adult and grab your kid before your kid starts getting involved, because the child part of us, or the part of us that was neglected or abandoned or abused or silenced, that part, that wounded part of us, is something that is with us, and under the right emotional circumstance, confluence, tension, stress, tiredness, hungriness, I've had enoughness, this is bullshit, I just want outness, we hit a wall and a reaction happens that is a very young part of us that just wants to be left alone or get space or be heard or be loved or be held. And that 13-year relationship and me stumbling my way through the last 4 years of it is what brought me to the point of saying, how do I embody the archetype of the lover when my nervous system is going sideways? I'm shut down. I can feel everything in me pulling back from her physically, from the space, and wanting to run the other way. It's a really difficult thing to embody masculine awareness and lover energy if you've never held capacity in your body where your nervous system is dysregulated and you have the ability to catch it. First, be aware of it, then catch it, then intervene from a more adult, more aware part of you and go, hey, deep breath. Okay, we're going to breathe in for a count of 4. We're going to hold 4. We're going to exhale 4. Now let's start box breathing. Take a step back. You're reacting. What do we say? I'm flooded. Yep, that's all we need to say to her. I'm flooded. Take a step back. Hey, I need a minute. Because my intention to show up as the lover in that moment is just a conceptual thing in my brain. It's my
Mm.
intention and I want to be that way. Bro, if I don't have the skills and I don't know how to breathe and I don't know how to catch what's happening for me at a neurological, physiological level, I'm gonna have a hell of a time trying to show up that way. What will happen is the conflict will happen. I'll either in an appropriate way or an inappropriate way, I'll try to separate myself from the conflict. My MO would be to say, Jason Gaddis used to say, I'm taking 15 minutes. This was his thing. Guys, I'm taking 15. I will be back in 15 and we will resolve this in 15. But right now, I'm taking 15 minutes for myself. And I'd walk out of the room and I'd either go upstairs or take a walk. But I was trying to use the 15 minutes to deal with the fact that my heart's racing, my breath is shallow, I'm reacting, and it's
Yes.
triggering me because not only is it reminding me of every other time she's yelled at me or every other time I've disappointed her, but now she's got my mother's face on her. She's got my ex's face on her. Do you know what I'm saying? And
Mm.
I don't have in the moment when all that's going on, no guy's got the capacity to sit there and hear the voice of Alan Watts in their head going, you are God. Just de-roll her. Don't hold her in the light of your mother. You're not wounded. You're just choosing to be wounded right now. Just get perspective. We don't do that. That's not real. What happens is we feel defensive, angry, anxious, tired, unseen, unaccepted, unloved. And when that's going on, all of our desire while we were sitting on the cushion, all of our desire while we were in the circle. Bro, you ever left circle, gone home and said, I just want to go home and put my arms around my woman and I just got this deep revelation or I just saw this part of me and I want to go and I want to be vulnerable, and you walk in the door and something horrible has transpired or life stuff has transpired. You walk in and you're like, I really want to, and she's just like, oh, don't you start with me. And you're like, what have I walked into? Right.
Mm.
So the working out of masculinity in the body, in the breath, and in the nervous system, I believe that the guys that are out there teaching this stuff right now are helping us embody that energy that we've wanted to bring for so long.
Mm.
I believe that's the way in to actually have it be part of our reality and our experience.
Yeah. So you talked at the beginning about the practices that you use to really take care of your body, your nervous system. What is it that men's work needs to bring to help people go out into the world with awareness of their nervous system, aware of their breath, awareness of their chemistry, awareness of the mind, to make it work, to make real results and lasting change that ripples out?
Mm. I think for me, I can speak for myself. I I didn't start putting this together until I committed to martial arts at a heart level, which is an embodiment practice. So for me, yoga is an embodied practice. Aikido is an embodied practice. Um, Qigong has really been pivotal for me because it's moving meditation, because it put me in a place where um, holding that much energy, learning to have the capacity to move energy through your body. I think that that is something that every man needs to get comfortable with and at home in the body with. One of the challenges is, we talk about eroticizing pain, and there's a whole ton of stuff about sexual shadow and the way that men eroticize pain in culture. We take it to some place where we can deal with it, and there's that whole addiction aspect of the lover in eroticized pain. I think that holding sexual energy, holding life energy, holding our anger, holding love, like fierce love, like being able to do that, that's a physical thing. That I've come to really believe that that is a physical thing. And I don't think I ever connected those dots at the beginning. Um, if I'm present, I have to be in a state to be present. And that state requires my breath and my body to be in a particular place in order for me to be in the present moment and not be marinating over the past or projecting into the future, especially in conflict or in a pressurized situation. That is something I build offline. Creating those practices in our lives is like what they do in a flight simulator. You train for the real world in those places. You feed and nurture your soul because the world is starving masculine. There's no masculine out there. There's, back to Bly, called it the father hunger. Those male mothers that Bly was talking about, those are the men that are doing this work, that are deepening in this work, that are not just talking, not just lecturing, not just sharing words, concepts, and principles anymore, but they're walking men into an experience of the state of wholeness that they actually can have for themselves. If
Mm.
you can experience and touch that wholeness and get yourself situated in that space, that can bring so much comfort to the people around us. That's the leadership that they need to feel. It's us.
Mm.
It was mind blowing to me to realize that I could affect a situation more with the way I carried myself and the tone, the pace of my voice, that could have as much impact, my body language could have as much impact as the words that I chose. Dude, that
Mm.
wasn't on my radar. I just didn't understand the subtlety. Even hearing concepts, people say, well, communication is like, a third of communication at best is what is spoken, and everything else is communicated in different ways. I heard that, but I didn't really get the necessity and the essential qualities of embodiment to really bring the masculine energies into the present moment. That is something that I think we're all going to be dealing with more and more as we find this way forward. I also think that it is the answer to um, you know telling little boys not to cry, destroying their ability to feel,
Mm.
shaming them for their feelings, telling little boys not to touch their penis, making them ashamed of being men, making them ashamed of their sexual energy or their sexual curiosity when they're little. Male mothers, men who understand embodiment, can hold space for the boy to be a boy. And they can also hold space to walk them from boyhood into early masculinity, into these forays into this space we're describing. There isn't a way for a little boy to just walk headlong into masculinity. There has to be men who are willing to serve as guides, men who
Mm.
are willing to bridge the gap, and who are practitioners. It's all over their life. Like there's almost like a stink to their lives that they're spending time in these things.
Yes.
They carry that energy and that odor. And to me, that's a really beautiful thing that we should get intentional around as men, is to carry the kind of masculinity that is protective and also champions little boys, because young
Hmm.
boys and young men need to be championed by older men. I can't Real quick story, short story. Young guy, IT guy, technically absolutely brilliant. I'm watching this guy lead. I'm just sitting back. I'm the consultant. I'm the outside guy looking in. Leads, takes control of a situation, solves problems 3 steps ahead. I went to the owners of the company and I said, this guy, who's I know like 25, you need to put him in your leadership meeting. And they're like, why? I said, because he isn't just a technical genius. He has all the makings of a significant leader in your company. You need to give him an opportunity to see what it's like to be in that environment and use those muscles. Would you rather that he developed as a leader and left and took all that leadership with him? Or would you rather be like participating actively, bringing him along and opening up opportunities? I said, because this kid's a leader one way or the other. He's either going to find his own way and leave the company, or you're going to make room for him. And they actually listened to me and they put him on the leadership meetings. And he blossomed right away. Like immediately when they recognized and gave him room, and he didn't overstep, he didn't get full of himself. It didn't go to his head. What did he do? He had gratitude for the opportunity and immediately began to work harder, offer more ideas, spend more of his own time investing in creative solutions. And to me, it's like if we took it in 3 different pieces, the practices, the practices have to just become part of modern masculinity. We get in nature, it's a practice. We practice breath work, it's a practice. We do this. We practice nonviolent communication. We learn how to respond. We put ourselves in situations on the regular to pressure test the system. And when we fail, we look inside, we lovingly pick ourselves up, and we go back to it. So the practices becomes a lifestyle. Next is recognizing this whole embodiment piece. So significant. I really think it's the missing link. It's the bridge to all of our good intentions and actually showing up as the man that we want to be on a regular basis, where we can build consistency. And then I think the third part is moving that embodied energy into almost like an eldering and a fathering energy to welcome younger men in and demonstrate, because of the practices, because of the embodiment, that there is a different kind of masculinity on offer, not
Mm.
conceptually, not in a textbook, but men who are leaning into that and demonstrating that as a lifestyle. That is a kind of leadership, a kind of beautiful, real world leadership that we can aspire to and move into, because we can all develop practices. We can all find a piece of that embodiment work that resonates, and we can all learn to open the door for younger men and reach out to younger men and become conscious and aware of our witness, our influence, our how we show up. You know what I'm saying? But I really
Mm.
believe, man, it's cultivating communities like that, cultivating habits like that, building these places in our lives where we're doing this on the regular basis. And I think it makes for less isolated men, more deeply fulfilled men, more connected men. And I think that that's a very powerful thing to plan for and move into. I think that's beautiful, man.
Mm. Beautiful. Well, is there anything you want to say about where people can connect more with you? Anything you offer? Anything you want to share with anyone listening?
Oh, sure. Um, from a from a business perspective, I'm always happy to have a conversation with aspiring entrepreneurs. One of my favorite things to do is talk to young guys that have business ideas and just be a sounding board. So I'm happy to do that. Easiest email is max at risingphoenixconsulting.com. And that is, just ping me there. I'm on Facebook as well. I am kicking around and stepping into the prospect of building a men's community. I have emerging masculinity. It's been something I've been sitting on for a while. I'm listening right now, but I'm noticing how it's not, I don't need to be like these other men that are out there, but I think I've got a unique experience because I've been doing the work for a while and just because of where I came from and what I do in the world. Um, love to connect with guys locally here in the Tampa area that are interested in this embodiment work. Same email address, but open to conversations with anybody here in the Tampa area and anybody that's, looking to connect just in terms of looking for direction or resources. Happy to have that conversation on email or, a catch-up call. I've learned a lot in the last 6 months to a year. And I'd love to, shorten the path for any man that's like, hey, bro, some of what you said resonated. Can you, shed some light, throw some, what's on Audible, what should I be checking out? Where, how do I start to immerse myself in this?
Beautiful. Well, Max, thank you so much for showing up here and giving an example of what it means to be a way shower. Just, shortening the struggle for those who also and then going in the same direction.
Absolutely. I'm honored, man. Thank you for creating a space to have this conversation. And thank you for the work you're doing, because it's even so many unsung heroes like yourself out there, man. Guys that are getting it done, that are showing up, that are doing the work, that are open. And being open and having humility is a really powerful place to be, because when we become a student, we can actually learn and evolve and change. So thank you for the work you're doing, brother. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too. Thank you for tuning into the Purpose Breakthrough Podcast and for investing in yourself today. If you're ready to stop chasing fulfillment and want to start making clear, confident decisions while doing the work you're meant to do, head over to tylerisit.com. There you can learn more about working with me to create a life of true purpose and alignment. This is just the beginning.